Good afternoon. We are continuing our discussion on Frank B. Wilderson, this time focusing on an interview he gave 3 years ago on a podcast. But first, I would like to make just some quick announcements and some remarks on the second assignment. Then I will briefly present the interview. And if you want, we can finish this meeting with a discussion. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for participating in this class the way you did. It was wonderful to work with such a kind and friendly group. And some of you are very driven, hardworking individuals, and on top of being super nice. And it was inspiring to be around this type of energy. I believe you have a promising future ahead of you. So we move on now to the announcements. We have here at the university some conferences in the library Wednesday and Friday from 10 to 2:15. And one of the people who present a conference is Anika in our group. And the title of her conference is Are You Mom Enough? An Argument Against Motherhood as an Identity. So Anika will present a paper Wednesday at 11:30. Sorry. Now that we are discussing, 2 seconds, please. Now that we are discussing conferences, I use this opportunity to thank Alex and Angela for their oral presentation 2 weeks ago. It is nerve-wracking to present in front of the class a paper, but they did an excellent job. They were well prepared, and it was an enriching experience for everyone. And finally, the admission deadline for the master program in philosophy at Guelph is January 12th, and the chair of the department wanted you to know that this program is funded, so technically you won't have to pay the tuition fees. Although in order to have your scholarship, you will probably have to work as a teaching assistant. Okay. In terms of closing remarks, it's just that I am a bit concerned after the discussion we had last Thursday regarding counter arguments. So just a reminder, I know you are last year students, so you know that, but just reminder that a counter argument is less important than understanding the argument. Therefore, even though being opinionated in a discussion may be entertaining for the class, in an academic paper, being opinionated is not necessarily a desirable quality. You must acknowledge that you have not read everything that Wilderson wrote. Therefore, you should give him the benefit of the doubts and be humble with your claim, because you are talking about a scholar who worked in that field for more than 2 decades. He's a chancellor at a university. And so what you want to do is make just modest claims. And regarding on that same subject, an argument based solely on empirical facts is incomplete and may show lack of engagement with the text. This is what I noticed last Thursday. You want to make sure that you use your logic to object to Wilderson. A good example of a counter-argument, I will read it, is if the reason why violence against another being is necessary to maintain a stable society is psychoanalytical, therefore related to human nature, then if Black people are no longer the object of collective catharsis, does that mean that another group will take that place? Which is a counter-argument formulated by Marx, and it's just good for me because it appeals to the reasoning behind Wilderson's claims. That's what I'm looking for if you want to make a counter-argument against Wilderson. And so this slide is just a reminder of what we discussed last Thursday. It was Wilderson basically comparing Lacan to Fanon. Lacan said that a neurosis can be solved, or a subject can be liberated from the neurosis if they go to the therapy, and at the end of the therapy, they arrive to that stage of full speech. So at the beginning of the therapy, they were in the empty speech with this illusion that they master their ego, and so somehow they think they can explain their mental illnesses. But full speech is the realization that they are a void, lost in the universe of symbols. And so it's a painful process. It's at the end of a painful process in which you deconstruct yourself and you let go all the phantasms about your ego. But then after this, you are able to go back to the society and engage with your contemporaries, to use Wilderson's language. But of course, it's different when you analyze neurosis with Fanon and with Black people, because according to Fanon, yes, a Black subject can suffer from neurosis because he is lost in this world of language, symbols. But it's more than that. He is also subjected to this matrix of violence that precedes and exceeds him. And in conclusion, therefore, to liberate from neurosis, if you are a Black subject, according to Fanon, you must not only deconstruct yourself in the symbols world, but deconstruct this identity or this matrix of violence in the real world, as you can see in his engagement, Fanon's engagement to the armed struggle in Algeria. So you have to deconstruct this word in the real level. Okay. So if we have no questions, I move on to the interview itself. I think it is useful to review this interview together because it gives us the opportunity to recapitulate the main ideas, Wilderson's main ideas. So this is a text version of an interview that Wilderson gave in a podcast 3 years ago with a graduate student and a professor. And you can see that the level of sophistication in the questions and in the answer is superior to the one we reviewed a few weeks ago, because both the graduate student and the professor read a lot of books, read a lot of publication from Wilderson, and they read also his recent book, Afro-Pessimism. Therefore, their questions were well informed, and because of that, Wilderson gave very detailed answers, very helpful answers, sophisticated answers. So they talk about the Native Americans, which is, I wanted to discuss that because it was a subject that we discussed a lot during the semester, the suffering of Native Americans. And Wilderson said in the interview that in the book he published 10 years ago, Red, White, and Black, he dedicated 80 pages to Native American suffering. And he said that if you read these pages, you can see how he was struggling talking about people like Native Americans who suffers genocide. And therefore, he used to be apologetic. But after reading another Afro-pessimist publication, Jared Sexton, he believes now that he was right and his intuitions are correct. Therefore, Black people suffers social death and not Native Americans. And I said that just for you to be aware of the internal conflicts Wilderson was going through when he was writing about the Native Americans. So if you want to make an objections to Wilderson, just be aware that, it's not that simple. Also, he discussed racial capitalism, which is another theme in our course. In that interview, Wilderson said that he's still an anti-capitalist, but he thinks he went back to his old ideas that he presented 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, he was trying to reconcile his ideas on anti-Blackness and capitalist exploitation. And for him, the halfway point was racial capitalism, which is a concept presented in the book Black Marxism by Cedric Robinson. But now he changed his ideas and he said that racial capitalism is not a framework sufficient enough to cover the suffering of Black people. So essentially, Black people do not suffer like other people. And libidinal economy, another theme that we discussed. Libidinal. So Wilderson credits Jared Sexton, for his understanding of libidinal economy. And in the interview, he said that Donald Trump is the first real American president because he exposed the libidinal economy. He's very transparent about that, as opposed to other presidents, American presidents, who try to hide this libidinal economy. And so for Wilderson, the Street Terrorism Enforcement and Protection Act is an expression of libidinal economy. So you have this fantasy because Black people are phobogenic objects. So you have this fantasy that Black people are a threat. So you make this law that really changed the lives of Black people in America. So he said everybody has all kinds of horrific fantasies about other people, but only non-Black people can make their fantasies have what's called objective value, which is to say that those fantasies then become the real stuff, the fabric that changes, subjugates, and makes for other lives. So libidinal economy. Also, Wilderson discussed the slave narratives, which you can connect to our understanding of Orlando Patterson, because of course, we said that the definition of slave come from Orlando Patterson. And in the interview, Wilderson said that he agrees with the definition, but he disagrees with Patterson when he talks about the recruitment of slaves. Patterson said that, according to Wilderson, that slaves were recruited among socially dead people, as if, for example, you commit a crime and the society gave you a choice between being dead, between being killed or being socially dead, and you choose socially dead, so you become a slave. For Wilderson, it implies that there is some kind of transgression at the origin of the anti-Blackness, but there's not. So the violence against Black people is gratuitous. And Black people did not exist before being socially dead, according to Wilderson. Before being socially dead or before being Black, they were ethnic groups. For example, he said Buganda, Shona. They were not Black, they were ethnic group. But because Arabs, Iranians, Chinese, Jews of Morocco decided that Africa is a place of slaves, then this notion of Black people exists, and then they are socially dead. So I think this answers a little bit the question whether what happens when you have a country in Africa where you have the majority who are Black. Do that mean they are socially dead? Yes, they are socially dead because non-Black people have access to this country. So they are prison slaves in waiting. Yeah. So that does not challenge really Wilderson. So I suggest that you do not try to challenge Wilderson with this idea that when you have a majority of Black people in a country, that means they are not socially dead. That no, because non-Black people can go there and enslave them. Okay, move on. This goes back to our discussion on the vengeance of Vertigo. Wilderson thinks that Black people lie to themselves, sometimes for psychoanalytical reason and sometimes because of the pressure. So they give an inaccurate recollection of their own lives and they feel compelled to provide a solution when they discuss a problem. And to solve this epistemological problem that you cannot have the truth just by listening to what Black people are saying, Wilderson said that he will look at the slave narratives by not believing or giving all the credit to the voice of the free conscious, and instead looking at the symptomatic enunciation or eruptions that point to a deeper knowledge. And the example that came to my mind when I read that is Assata Shakur, when she said in I Hated It, when talking about her experiences with left Black coalitions. So this is, to me, an eruption of the truth, because it's a slow, a small passage in her book in which she says really what she thinks, that she hated that. So that's what Wilderson is looking for when he looks at the slave narratives or the other biographies of Black people. He said, when Black people write, we tend to be shackled by this dual need that comes out of Anglo-American pedagogy, which is the articulation or the description of problems and a rhetorical gesture towards or outright elaboration of a prescriptive cure. So it's just this idea that we have to provide a solution every time we talk about a problem. Now, regarding what Wilderson thinks of Afro-pessimism, so now we are in 2020, so Afro-pessimism is now an international movement. And he said that this is, epistemologically, it represents the end of the world. And that Afro-pessimist project is the end of the world, just like we saw with the revolution of the slaves in Haiti, in which they burned everything down on the island. And for Wilderson, it's good, and it would be great if they were able to go to the US and burn everything too. So that's what he said in page 104. And also another remark regarding Afro-pessimism that seemed to answer one of your questions. He said, it's just that the word of other oppressed people says, well, what does it mean for me as an Asian or Latinx immigrant? And we've tried to answer that question rather than saying, no, you have to tell us what your analysis of your suffering and your analysis of your capacity to be liberated means for us. We're not going to tell you what ours means for you. And it seems that it answers the question regarding what this description of how we can situate this description of anti-Blackness into this racism framework. And we can see that for Wilderson, it's not his problem. He's just here to discuss the suffering of Black people. He does not feel the need to connect the dots for you for the racist perspective, for the racist framework. It's not his problem. And also regarding Afro-pessimism, Wilderson said in the interview that he practiced Buddhism, but it's not relevant for Afro-pessimism because it welcomes every religion. Just like Malcolm X said in his speech, The Ballot or the Bullet in 1964, leave your religion at home. So it's really a fight for the freedom of Black people. And he is also anti-identity politics. Afro-pessimists in general, he said, are against identity politics. So maybe it's possible to connect that to this question regarding whether Afro-pessimists are also Black nationalists. It seems that if they are against identity politics, they must be against nationalism or Black nationalism. But you can, this is just me, but you can say, what is your opinion regarding that matter? He reminds us also that at the beginning, they were just trying to question the universality of Marxist and psychoanalyst claims, as we studied these last weeks. And also thinks that non-Black people, as they are used to, will probably try to reappropriate Afro-pessimism for their own interest, as they did for some musical genre created by Black people. So we can finish this interview with the message of hope that Wilderson gave. He said that since it's not a divine order, since this dichotomy between non-Black people and Black people is not a divine order, it can technically be undone. And he saw the benefits of Afro-pessimism in the Black youth, because they can take a critical stance when they think about their involvement in their coalitions fighting for every kind of liberation. And it has also positive impact on Black elderly or older Black people, older than 65 years old, because when they reflect their lives, and thinking and asking themselves, what happened to my life? They have this Afro-pessimist perspective that can help them find some answers. So he thinks that underground, these two groups can make a difference in the fight for Black freedom. So a reminder that Thursday we won't see each other. Today was the last day, and you will have 2 participation points for being here. And Thursday, if you have any question, I will be online from 11:30 to 2:20 if you have last minute questions regarding your essay. What else I wanted to say? You have your final grades posted by December 14 in CourseLink, and you have until December 22nd to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns regarding your grades. Now we can move on to the discussion. Thank you. Bye.